Welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I am your host, Ray Harkins, and this is episode number 7. Summer is approaching, and it's getting hotter, which is okay by me. I'm all right with the sun. But for those of you that live elsewhere, that is hotter than here in Southern California. I apologize in advance because there are parts of this country that get pummeled, and as far as the heat's concerned. And yeah, I'm sorry that you're feeling that, but that's why you can listen to this podcast, because you can be usually in air-conditioned areas as you listen to this, or unless you're walking to work or wherever. Yeah, I hope you can stay cool in some way, shape, or form. But anyways, you need to subscribe to this show. People can go to iTunes and just search 100 Words Podcast, and it'll pop up. Then you can subscribe, and every Tuesday you will get a new episode of this show. So subscribe, don't mess up, because some of you kind of pop in and pop out, and that's totally fine. I understand. But this way you will have all of the shows that when you are able to revisit it, that you can do so, rather than just forgetting about it completely. Because I don't want to be forgotten about, and I want to hang out with you. I want to have a relationship. And you can also follow us on Twitter at 100 Words Podcast. And if you have any other additional questions, feedback, or whatever else, you can email me at 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. And like I mentioned in a previous episode, sometimes people ask me questions, and I randomly have stuff lying around my house, and I'm like, I don't want this anymore, or I don't know what to do with this. And so I just send a gift to people, just because, I don't need a ton of stuff in my house. I already have an absurd amount of records. And yeah, anyways, not saying you'll get free records or promising free stuff to everybody that writes me, but you know what I'm saying. Let's get some housekeeping stuff out of the way. I also need a programmer/coder to help me with the 100 Words Podcast website. Because as of right now, my goal is to have people that don't want to subscribe via iTunes and stream it through their web browser to be able to do that, but I am stupid, and I only have a very, very, very rudimentary knowledge of how to do that. So someone reach out to me, let me know if they'd be able to help. I can pay you in some way, shape, or form, and we can work something out, So yeah, get in touch. And also, I do a music festival with my good friend and occasional contributor to this show, Joey. We do a fest called Sound and Fury. And for those of you that are into independent music, hardcore, punk, whatever you'd like to call it, go to soundandfuryfest.com, and you can see a list of all the bands, and come to the show. It's super fun. It's in Santa Barbara. It's a really nice time of year in that area. It's from July 20th to the 22nd, and yeah, a bunch of bands that you've probably liked at one point or another are playing, and it's a great time, so come out to that. And one other random thing. So I recently had the pleasure of seeing the band Rammstein for the first time live, and a friend of mine had been speaking their praises for years and years and years, pretty much as long as I've known him. And so he's always been like, this is probably one of the best bands I've ever seen live. And he works at a record label, and he sees bands all the time. So for him to say that meant something. And so they were playing the Honda Center in Anaheim, just down the street from me. So I was like, well, as long as I don't have to pay for a ticket, because I'm a cheap bastard, that I'll go see it. So me and one of my friends, who it was his birthday, and Rammstein is one of his favorite bands, so we decided to go. And like, words really aren't enough. Like it was an unbelievable show, because I mean, you hear, I don't know if anybody has ever spoken to you about this band or what they do live, but it's insane. I mean, the production value is ridiculous. Like, there's fire and giant penises ejaculating on the crowd. Sorry if that offends some of you. Words can't describe it. You must see it live. And even if you're just a super casual fan of the band like I am, I mean, honestly, I know one song by the band, like that Du Hast song, like the single that broke them here in America. But it's just an unbelievable show. And it just got me thinking where it's like, there's different types of shows. There's like obviously shows, what we typically call it. You go to your local all ages venue and 300-400 kids show up and bands play and it's a fun time. That's a show. And then you have a concert, which is obviously like next level up, and you're talking about between 1,000 to 10,000 people, depending on what you view as that. But it's it's more of a larger, nicer venue, and the bands put some production value into it. And then there's an experience, which is basically what I had with Rammstein, and probably only a few other times, like seeing Sigur Rós at the Hollywood Bowl, or seeing Guar, as ridiculous as that sounds. But those are experiences, and so I'm just glad to be able to kind of run across those occasionally in my life, because it really does kind of remind you of how entertainment works, where it's like we get spoiled sometimes by going to so many shows and kind of forget that sometimes we're there for fun. We're there to see bands and what have you. But, if you go to a lot of shows, sometimes after a while, that novelty wears off. And so you need these experiences to kind of be like, wow, live music is absolutely unbelievable. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. I also wanted to bring Scott Arnold back onto the show. So, Mr. Scott Arnold, thank you for appearing again and giving us your cultural recommendations. What do you have for us this week?
I have a little appreciated movie that happens to be my favorite movie of all time.
Before you say it, can I venture a guess?
Yeah, you'll never guess it.
No, I know, but that's part of the fun of it.
Okay.
I'm gonna think you're gonna say.
Well,
nope.
Let me give you a hint.
Okay.
Subtitles.
Ooh, it's subtitles. Okay, I was gonna say Mighty Ducks 2, but
no.
Okay, continue.
The movie is called The Lives of Others.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever heard of this movie?
I've heard of it. I have not seen it though.
It was nominated for I think, foreign language Oscar in 2007. Mm-hmm. And it's about East Berlin after World War II. Okay. And a little history for the listeners. At the time, the government was listening in on everyone, and they were really worried that people were going to defect to West Germany, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And this movie is about a prominent author and art figure who starts to get these ideas in his head, and then the government tries to just kind of follow him and make sure he doesn't get too far out of line. And I won't spoil the ending.
Well, that's good. That sounds kind of 1984-ish in
it
a
is.
way. Nice.
But it's the greatest film of all time.
Wow. Okay. Even better than Mighty Ducks 2.
A little bit.
Okay. And do you have any other recommendations for us as well?
Yeah, my second recommendation is for the people in the highest tax bracket. It's a magazine, podcast, radio station, and radio network. It's called Monocle.
Oh, okay.
Have you heard of this?
Just from you. So
this was started by the guy who he started out as a BBC correspondent and in war zones and stuff in his early 20s. Uh-huh. And he moved to London, started a prominent design magazine called Wallpaper, which
still exists. Right?
Yeah. He doesn't. I don't think he has anything to do with it anymore. And then he started this new brand called Monocle, which is kind of explores all things in finer living.
It's kind of like I remember when I was a kid and I liked cars when I was 10 or 11. The magazine, The Rob Report. Do you ever remember that?
No, I don't.
Basically, it was just this. It was like Playboy for cars, where it's they had ridiculous Aston Martins and Lamborghinis and cars that there's 30 in the world or something.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so it's you look at this and you're just oh, so these are vehicles that only 0.001% of the people can ever buy or afford.
Right. So this takes that to a whole new level where it's 115 euro for a towel. made by the baby's eyelashes. Yeah, exactly. But But they've done some really cool things. Like they were like one of the first big magazines to start a podcast, and they spun that out into a 24-hour radio show. So they have different programs running all day.
Oh, wow.
And they seem to be doing well enough to, they seem to have highly trained people in all over the world reporting. So
interesting. So
it's really cool.
But they don't have like a television component or anything?
They have a video podcast component where they're actually like interviewing presidents of countries and stuff. So I think their little tag is like design, architecture, business, and culture.
Oh, interesting. And the impression that I get is, well, something that may turn people off is the fact that, like, are the hosts or the people that are obviously doing the interviews, are they snooty patooty, or they're just kind of like, well, these are very smart people?
Both. Like half of them are.
Okay.
Like the founder, he's the worst. Like everything's about like he has a column and stuff, and everything would be like, oh, I just got back from Tokyo yesterday, and blah blah blah.
It's basically full of like humble brags.
Yeah, the whole thing's humble brags. There's actually a Tumblr like devoted to stuff he would say.
I love the internet.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, that's spectacular. I wanted to mention one movie that I saw recently that I'm still thinking about. I don't know if I like it or I don't know. I just don't know how to feel about it.
Okay.
There's this movie called The Sound of My Voice. Have you heard of that yet?
I've never heard of that.
We'll watch the trailer. It basically takes place modern day. It's this this young couple that infiltrates, or their goal is to infiltrate a cult.
I saw that the trailer's awesome.
Yeah, and that's kind of what hooked me and made me want to see it. So a friend and I saw it. Maybe it was about a week and a half ago. It's in a very small, limited run, and I don't know anybody who's attached to it that's like of note or anything, because all the people that are in the movie are definitely just independent actors.
Yeah.
But it was a really compelling movie. But then the ending happens, and it's kind of just like, like, I don't know. It's very, I don't want to say that they leave it like open-ended, but they definitely leave it up to interpretation, where it's like, I don't know. It's a very interesting movie. It definitely makes you think about it and kind of, question the idea of sane versus, sanity versus insanity, and kind of what defines that. And sometimes people that are considered insane are actually sane, and we're the ones that are not viewing the situation from the right light, so it was interesting, and it was really short too. It was maybe about like an hour and 20 minutes. So
did it feel cheap?
No, the production value was great, and it definitely you didn't feel like you were watching like a student film or anything like that. It was definitely, even though they had a limited amount of like places that they shot, it still was cool. So
cool.
Yeah, I recommend it. It's a little mind twister, but not like in a crazy totally blanking on Christopher Nolan's movie, Inception. It's not like Inception where you're just like, oh my god. It's just kind of like, a simple turn, and it makes you think. So
that's cool. I would like to inform your readers that The Bachelorette is back on the air.
You are a big cultural proponent of The Bachelorette.
It's my one reality show that I watch.
Good. So, and you're excited about this upcoming Bachelorette?
Yes, the people I watch it from and myself all have a hunch that she had some work done to her body, and she's got some new boobs.
Of course. Why not?
So.
All right, there we go. Well,
okay.
Thank you again, Scott. I appreciate it.
I'll keep you updated on that.
Yes. Every 2 weeks or so, we'll check in with that.
Okay, great.
All right. This week's guest is Mr. Chris Logan. He was the vocalist for, some would say legendary, I would agree with them, legendary hardcore band Chokehold from Canada. And he also sang for a band called 78 Days. and he was also the proprietor of Goodfellow Records. My relationship with him started there because he signed my old band Taken to the label and released everything that we had ever done. So him and I became close, not only business-wise, but just as a person. He was definitely one of the most genuine and down-to-earth people that I had ever had the privilege of running across through music. And yeah, so I thought he would be really interesting to sit down with just because he has such a history of being involved in independent music and so many different sides of what it takes to be in a band, what it takes to run a record label, and then kind of life afterwards, because now he just kind of keeps music in his life for fun and doesn't do it as a profession or anything like that, as well as his ever-changing philosophical beliefs, because life isn't about the destination but the journey. I think that's the saying. But in any event, I had a really awesome conversation with him, and here we are discussing when his last interview was.
Freedom doesn't come from 9 to 5. Freedom is at our disposal. Time to stay alive. Time to be content with.
Well, actually, when was the last interview you did?
I have no idea. I have actually. Well, you know how I am awesome at communicating with people, so
Yes.
I have 2 interviews sitting on my desktop of my computer that I think probably stretch back 2 years that I haven't dealt with yet. So.
Oh my, that's amazing! Like, are they for Chokehold? Or kind of
one of them is for Goodfellow.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most intense interview I've ever because the kid that did it knows more about the label than I do.
That's weird.
It's creepy almost, like the amount of knowledge he has, and he brings up stuff that like I don't even remember, and I'm just like, well, I don't remember that, and so he'll root around and come back to me and goes, well, here it is, here's the proof, and he'll type it out. Like,
Wow.
oh my god. So I gave him the first half of it, and then I never heard from him again. So maybe he was just like not impressed. I don't know.
Maybe his webzine no longer exists anymore.
Yeah, who knows?
Well, obviously we've known each other for quite some time, but there's always that, and I have an idea of where you obviously first got introduced to, independent music, as it were.
Right.
But I can't remember if were you actually born in Hamilton, or were you in the
I was born in Hamilton.
Born and raised in Hamilton, Ontario.
Yeah, man.
I feel like you need a huge chest piece tattoo commemorating your many years of residence there.
Yeah, probably that, or maybe like one of those Moby carts.
Well, they're prevalent there.
I'm sure I'll end up in one eventually if I stay here, right?
And then you can just roll around abandoned malls.
Yeah, exactly.
So where did you first get the introduction to what was your gateway to all the independent music that you because you got into metal first, right?
Yeah, I've all music's just been always there. Like with when I was younger, I think I got introduced just to music in general, like via my brother and my cousins. Mm-hmm. Like I was always there, and my brother is always listening to like AC/DC and Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. And then my cousins kind of were into more gnarly stuff like Iron Maiden, which spoke to me a little bit more, probably because of the artwork and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like it just went from metal to rap, and then kind of back to metal.
Please tell me your rap phase, like you actually acted out on it and you dressed up like those.
I did. I was into breakdancing and stuff.
That's right. I vaguely remember you telling me about that.
Absolutely. I was heavily into rap and breakdancing and all that stuff.
Did you?
I
Was this
even have a horrible story which I won't share with you about breakdancing. So,
But I think you didn't. You had a crew, and didn't you? Did you do it at school and everything? Like have the cardboard and stuff?
yeah, we had cardboard, but I don't think I ever did it at school. I think I strictly just kept it to outside of my driveway and stuff.
That's it. That's incredible.
Yeah, like the rap was like Run DMC,
Sure.
LL Cool J, stuff like that. Nothing too cool, but and then that went back into metal, ironically, like back into like Iron Maiden and Quiet Riot and Wasp and stuff like that. I had a neighbor 2 doors down who had a membership to that, buy 10 cassettes for
Columbia House.
yeah, and he would get nothing but metal, and he'd always pass it down to me. And so I got into, I don't know, like just really bad metal, like Cinderella and Wasp and
Sure.
garbage like that. And then I had this kid that lived around the corner that he had this tape case that he carried with him everywhere. And in that tape case was like just really crazy shit, like Sepultura and I don't know, I can't remember exactly what was in it, but he would lend me, tapes to take home and listen to over a couple of days, and I just couldn't believe the stuff I was hearing out of this tape case.
Yeah.
And that kid actually ended up he actually committed suicide.
Oh.
And his mom gave me that tape case.
Wow.
Yeah, so I inherited probably, it was only 10 or 12 tapes, but the stuff that was in there was crazy and just kind of stuck in my head.
Sure.
And then I got really, really heavily into punk, like big time, like Exploited and Sex Pistols and The Clash and all that stuff. And that's kind of where I got the introduction to, that kind of stuff, because I think it's a familiar story with everyone, is they would, I'd go down to the record store downtown, buy some LPs, and then go through the thanks lists.
Right.
And then see what bands they were thanking, and then, try and dig up those bands.
Sure.
Which was kind of difficult back in those days because there was no internet, so you couldn't just Google them.
Right. Well, and especially because, just for everybody's frame of reference, like Hamilton is about an hour south of Toronto, and
yeah,
it's a working class city, and it's not like the cultural hub of Canada.
Definitely not. And we had two record stores that were actually side by side to each other. One was Cheapies, and they had some okay stuff, but the other one sold really cool stuff and had tons of shirts and buy metal bands and stuff, and I used to go down there and spend pretty much all my money on records and t-shirts. But that's what I do. I'd write down all the bands that were on these thanks lists, and I'd go through, spend Saturday afternoon rooting through the bins trying to find any of these bands that were on the thanks list. And I ended up buying a Minor Threat record and buying a Youth of Today record, and this was before I even had any idea what hardcore was or straight edge or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, for me to get a Youth of Today record and put it on and be like, what the fuck is this?
Right.
What is, what's with these guys? I'm listening to Slayer and Sex Pistols and Exploited, and then I'm listening to Youth of Today who are, talking about vegetarianism and stuff like that. So
yeah. And was this kind of all through junior high and high school and that type of stuff?
Yeah, this was grade 9 is grade 8. I was pretty into metal. Iron Maiden was my thing. Power Slave was, I was listening to that nonstop. As soon as I got into grade 9, I met this kid named Sid, ironically, and he turned me on to punk, and I just went just balls deep into punk, nonstop. Everything was punk. And that's kind of where I got into meeting Jeff Beckman and Matt Beckman, because they were into hardcore and I was into punk, and you know, I'd walk through the halls of the school and they would make fun of me because you know, I'd be wearing my punk stuff and they were super hardcore skater dudes, and that's kind of how I got introduced to them in a roundabout way, while getting to know who they were, is because they would, you know, shove me into lockers and call me names and stuff like that, and Jeff used to throw brushes at me in class and stuff like that. So.
That's interesting. So you were clearly like not friends with them until after.
Not at all. No. Yeah. In fact, like me and Matt were kind of. Matt was like just an asshole to me, 100%. Where I kind of knew acquaintances of Jeff that were friendly towards me, but Jeff was, Jeff was like an icon in the school. You know what I mean? Like, it was high school, and Jeff was the hardcore punk skater dude that everyone looked up to.
Oh, interesting.
And Matt was his little brother who liked to cause trouble. And,
just for a frame of reference for everybody, we're talking, like Chris said, Jeff and Matt Beckman, who ended up playing in Chokehold with Chris, and then ended it. I mean, yeah, because I always have to do that occasionally, just so people were like, "Who? What?" And then Jeff ended up playing in Haymaker and 500 million other bands from the Southern Ontario area.
Exactly.
And then Matt also played with you in 78 Days, correct?
Yeah, me and Matt, and you know, Matt to this day is my best friend. So
right,
you know, we hang out all the time. He's my best friend. But you know, back then we still joke about it. How he was, you know, he'd roll up on me because he knew I skated as well, and him and his cronies would roll up on me in the hallway and ask me how high I could ollie, and let me see you do it right now, and stuff like that. And then they call me poser or this and that. So
right,
it was funny. But,
so with all that, like, as you were starting to get exposed to other things, like, because Chokehold was obviously not your first musical project, and I use that in quotes. Because I mean, you were in Burst of Silence, right?
Yeah, I was in Burst of Silence, but that was kind of alongside Chokehold while Chokehold was together.
Got it.
But before Chokehold, I didn't really do much other than I was in a band with the singer of Burst of Silence called God's Opposer.
Oh, see, now to me, this is like some of the best parts of this podcast that I've been able to do so far, where it's like people reveal their first band names, and it's just like they're all so amazingly bad, but so good at the same time. You're just like, dude, if you came up with a good band name when you're like, 15 years old, like, you're a poser. You have to have a shitty band name.
Yeah, you can't be God's Opposer, right?
No, dude, God's Opposer. Was it pop punk or what was it?
No, it was. We were kind of like a metal band. I have a distinct memory of having a jean jacket with a huge Suicidal Tendencies patch on the back at that point. So
that's amazing.
And we used to drink and do, smoke pot and just in his mom's basement while she was home. And then we go in his garage, and I think he had an amp that was probably the size of, it was one of those little, it was like a 1 foot by 1 foot practice amp, which we used to call toaster ovens.
Right.
And that's all we had. And then my friend Zach played keyboards. I can't remember who played drums, but Ryan sang, and it was horrible.
I would hope so.
But we thought we were pretty awesome. So.
Sure. So then that sort of gave you a taste of what you, like, when you started playing together with those dudes, were you like, this is what I want to do? Like, I really need to do something with bands. Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to be in a band. Like, when I was a little kid, I would have my mom had this meter stick, and I used to put on her boots, her big leather boots, and pull out this meter stick and pretend it was a guitar and pretend I was Gene Simmons. And I'd wear these huge leather boots and just, like, rock out downstairs to Kiss, Mm-hmm. But I've always wanted to be in a band. It was just
what, music was my life, always has been in some way or form. So to actually like playing an instrument, well, pretend I could play an instrument was pretty awesome. And none of us could play, so
No.
Well, it wasn't like there was pressure there to be good or anything. So
right. And so with that, as you started to form Chokehold and everything, was it one of those things where it's like you guys practiced a shitload because there was no places to play, or did you pretty much like, all right, after 2 weeks, like we have some songs, so let's play, our friend's basement and that type of stuff?
yeah, there was when we started to I think we were called Bottom Line first, and I played bass, and my friend Andrew, who was our roadie for Chokehold, sang. And then after I moved to vocals, and then we put the band together, there was nowhere to play. There's no zero hardcore scene or like punk scene or anything to be had in Hamilton. There was no all ages clubs. Like an all ages show is just unheard of at all.
Right.
So I think if I remember what we did, we went to this really shitty bar on the mountain, which I'm sure no one will know what the mountain is, but it's Hamilton. It's part of the city anyway. We went to this really shitty bar and sat down with the owner and said, we want to put a show on here. And with our band and another local band who wasn't hardcore or anything, they're just like an indie rock band. And somehow we coerced them into doing it and making it all ages, which was another huge deal because there was a bar in the basement. And that was the first show we did, like the first Chokehold show, and I think probably the first hardcore show in Hamilton for, I don't know, probably 20 years or more, 25 years.
Wow.
But I could be wrong, but there's nothing going on in Hamilton. It was just, we had to really struggle to start something up, and it was just us and our friends, maybe like at the most, maybe 10 of our friends.
Sure.
That were kind of into the same stuff, and then friends from Toronto would come down, and we did this show with this other band called The Misunderstood. And it was just our band and their band, and they were like an indie rock band. And I don't know, tons of kids came, but we were still in high school, so it was easy to get kids from school to come.
Sure, well, because you're bored on a Friday night or a Saturday night or whatever. Yeah,
it's all ages. There's nothing else going on, so we could pack the place, but when we played, people were just like, "What the fuck?" Like they.
Yeah, what does it sound like?
Yeah, because we were playing at that point. We were playing super fast, like as fast as we could, and I think we were playing Slapshot covers, and I can't remember. Eventually, we played a Chorus of Disapproval cover as well.
Sure,
but people just were kind of taken aback, and everyone just had a good time, and stage dive and whatever. But
right. And was this was towards the end of high school, like beginning of university?
This was I think it was probably grade 11.
Okay.
Because we were playing shows, and we were still in high school probably for a year while we were playing a few shows here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that was, we played at this bar a few times, and then the owner got real greedy and realized that he had something, like we were bringing in a lot of kids.
Right.
So he would just keep all the money, and it's not like we were into the money, but we knew he was being a dick and keeping all the money. So at one night we just rolled around there in a car and threw a giant pile of spark plugs through his front windshield of his truck. So that was the end of the shows there anyway.
I wonder why.
Yeah, and then I think we did one show at another bar. It was like us, Snapcase, and Ricochet. And then after that, we moved all the shows to that 400 Upper Sherman place.
And so it sounds like obviously a lot of the people that you were running with, and I mean, you could probably still argue that some of them might have this mentality still, where sort of the mischievous nature, where it was just like because of your guys' location, and essentially you were building something out of nothing. Did that have an influence on the fact that Chokehold was, because I mean, for anybody that's ever paid attention to what Chokehold did, is you guys were, I think outspoken is probably an understatement. um, you guys were obviously like making your voices and opinions known, and like, do you think that was part of it, or was it just based on the fact that you guys were of a certain age, where it's just like, hey, we realize the louder we yell about this, there might be more attention paid to us, and not from like a, oh, this is going to make our band bigger, but just like, hey, our views will get across.
It's hard to say, like, at that point, I don't think we really had an agenda or cared about what we were saying. Like, it was just, I mean, we were pretty young in the game, and our influences were, racism is bad and sexism is bad, and drinking is bad and drugs are bad. So that's all we really cared about and wrote about.
Okay.
And at that point, we're fans of like Shelter and stuff like that. So it didn't really occur to us to write about anything more until we got kind of bored and realized that you can't keep writing about the same shit over and over again.
Right. You can't have 15 songs about straight edge.
Yeah, exactly. And Jeff has always been like the outspoken guy, and he kind of was the guy who said, I would go over to his house and we would sit down and try and write lyrics together. Mm-hmm. And some of the shit he was coming up with was like, whoa, like, no one's talking about this. This is crazy. This is awesome.
Right.
So then we kind of went through a tough guy phase, like after our initial, positive hardcore phase.
Sure.
And then, we decided that we would sit down and write about stuff that, no one was really talking about. So I don't know what in particularly influenced that direction, but other than, like I said, we decided that we couldn't just sit down and write the same, like, we got to write another record or we got to write another 7-inch. Right. We've already covered these things, where can we go from here? And
sure.
I think both Jeff and I and Matt were starting to listen to bands like Born Against and Rorschach and stuff like that, mm-hmm. and Hell No, and so that definitely played a part in it as well.
Yeah. When did you first start to notice people giving a shit? Probably your last show, I'm guessing, because that's usually the way things go.
I mean, depends on what you mean by giving a shit. Like,
I guess because obviously, like, we're talking about the early '90s here, so
yeah,
giving a shit is definitely you not talking about comparing it to what people are experiencing giving a shitness in 2012, but giving a shit where it's like, oh wow, like we can actually start doing tours of the States and head over to Europe and that type of stuff. Like what was the first step that you were just like, wow, this is really fucking weird, we're doing this?
I don't know. I mean, like, we never had problems booking a tour because we just did it ourselves, and we never really interested in looking for anyone else's help, or at that time booking agents I don't think even existed or gave a shit about hardcore bands. But
yeah, they definitely didn't give a shit about hardcore bands then.
Yeah, and we just we would make friends with anyone that would at that point it was like writing letters. We'd get tons and tons and tons of mail, like just crazy amounts of mail at Jeff's house, and whoever wrote us, we'd write back and make that connection, and most of the time that connection was a zine or a band or someone that could help out with their local scene.
Sure.
So, that's how we booked tours. We had tons of friends, and we didn't care if they were popular or not, and we didn't care if the city was big or not, or had a scene or didn't have a scene. We didn't give a shit.
Right. You just knew that you were able to kind of piece something together.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't care. We had a van and equipment, so we just loaded it up, and we would drive 7 hours and play in front of 5 people.
Right.
And we did. Our whole first tour was that, probably 2 weeks of playing in front of 5, 10, 15 people, and it didn't matter. But Mike Warden took notice, and I think as much as we've had our falling out with Mike Warden, he's probably the reason that we got the attention that we got.
And this is Mike from Conquer the World Records, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he put out that record, and it definitely got us attention. And he brought us to Detroit, played with Snapcase. And that was the other thing is we would go to shows probably every single weekend. We'd go to a show in Buffalo or Syracuse. Mm-hmm. And so we had tons of friends there, and all those bands were starting to get big and tour as well. So that helped us as well. Get out there anyway.
Sure.
Upstate New York especially. But I think it's probably when we realized that we were like, holy shit, like this is going really well, was after that record came out, and we were doing weekend trips down to Philadelphia and Boston, and there'd be 300 kids at the show. And every time we go back, kids would know the words, and we would be like, holy fuck, this is awesome. This is crazy.
Yeah. And so as that stuff started to pop for you guys, and when I say pop, you started to see people coming out to the show specifically to see you guys, how did how did your family react and stuff? Because by this point, you were kind of having to make decisions to sacrifice time and normal lifestyle for obviously focusing on the band. Were they like, yeah. oh Chris, you were making terrible decisions?
Honestly, I hate to say it, but yeah, they were like that, because sure. I mean, my family is like, my mom and dad are awesome, and they always support me, but they definitely weren't believers in the band, and I don't think they really grasped it or believed that we were doing something that was successful until they had to drive us to the airport and we were going to Europe.
Right. They're like, what do you mean?
Yeah, and that was truly the first time I think they were like, well, wow, I think they actually did it.
Yeah.
So they drove us to the airport, and they picked us up from the airport 8 weeks later. And, we looked like a bunch of homeless people, but, I think that was the first time that my family anyway was, Jeff and Matt's family was always awesome. Mm-hmm. We practiced there. They, but I got to say, none of our families ever came to see us play, ever.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and, I don't care, because I wouldn't know how to explain it to them anyway if they did come and see it. So
right.
Maybe Matt and Jeff's parents did. I can't remember, but I don't think they did. But, yeah, I know my dad was always kind of, I don't know about this. And, even to this day, if I'm playing in a band with Matt and Dave from Harvest, mm-hmm. And if he gets wind of it every now and then, he's like, oh, I don't know if you're getting it back into this band stuff, and I don't know about that, and I don't want you off touring everywhere, and you're trying to run a business.
That's amazing. That I think it's just it's a parental instinct from that sort of perspective, where because they experienced the whole Woodstock and everything like that, and
yeah,
just having the context of that in your head versus what we've experienced with independent music, where it's just it's on a whole, when we say tour, it doesn't mean what they think of tour.
Yeah, no, exactly. And yeah, I'm pretty my parents are completely, to this day, and then are completely clueless to anything that I did with the band. Like,
Mm.
they never asked, or I'd come home and there's no, I don't know, there's just zero interest in it. I don't know why, because they're always supportive of everything I've done.
Mm.
Other than that, so I don't really know the reasoning behind it. And
Sure.
I don't want to make them seem like bad parents, but yeah, as far as the band goes, they have zero interest in it and never really asked much about it. So.
Yeah, I know for sure. And so as
What about you? Like, how?
I mean, it's interesting because I do think, 'cause, I mean, since you and I are, I mean, you're a few years older than me, so it's like we're a little different generationally speaking, but our parents are probably roughly around the same age, so I feel we probably had similar experiences. My mom in particular, like she didn't understand it, but if I were able to place the band in context versus like real world stuff, i.e., Mom, I'm only going to tour during the summers. I'm only going to tour during like, these specific designations of time.
Yeah.
It made sense to her more, where it's like, oh, okay, I get what he's doing. But I think once I did start to let her in, as far as like, I mean, something as stupid as like folding merch, where it's like, she's like, oh my gosh, like you're ordering a lot of t-shirts, and like,
yeah,
just those little things, like she began to understand it a little bit. Then like, whatever, if, her and I went to like, eat out or something like that, and some random kid was like, oh dude, I saw you guys last weekend, like,
yeah,
that stuff started to make it more real to her. And
yeah.
but no, I understand what you're saying. I mean, she showed an interest, but at the same time, like, I'm not going to sit down and explain like, dude, the show in Boise, Idaho was amazing, like,
yeah.
it doesn't...
No, my mom was awesome, because I used to do tons of shows in Hamilton, and I'd have the band stay at my house, and she would always get up and make everyone, breakfast, and she just treated everyone that stayed there like gold, but just never asked what was going on, just that she just did it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's...
It's never like, well, who are these people and why are they here, and why is there a leaky van in the driveway? And one of the band's silkscreen t-shirts on my driveway, like they just laid out like 50 t-shirts and dropped the screen, screened it, go into the next one, and
right.
She just sat on the porch and watched the whole thing, never inquired about what the hell was going on. But yeah.
Well, I think that just speaks to a person's, soul and the way they view the world, where it's like, okay, well, like, clearly these are friends of my son, so,
yeah,
I'll be nice to them.
And she treated everyone so well, and, do your laundry, and here's some food. And
which is like the savior for any band on tour.
Yeah, totally.
That's amazing. So as Chokehold started to kind of wrap up, and because you guys came to a very tumultuous end, and you did a final show going into it. No, like you knew you were going to break up after that, because you played a final show in Boston. Am I correct or no?
Yeah. It was in the hell's that place called? I can't remember what it's called. New Bedford.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but we knew, because we did. We knew when we were in Europe, we kind of knew that things were coming to an end, because the band kind of split in half when we were over there, and me and Matt kind of did our thing, and Jeff and the other guys did their thing.
Sure.
And we didn't. There was actually one point on that tour where we discussed breaking up and just going our own way in Europe, because I don't think we knew what we were getting into when we went there. We didn't know who. I mean, we knew who was doing the tour, but we didn't know anything about them. It was the MAD,
right?
And from what the story we gathered from more than a dozen people over there that told us, is that they kind of used us to better their
reputation.
Yeah, like, I guess they were doing Sick of It All and Madball and Agnostic Front and all those kind of bands, but they weren't really helping out smaller bands.
Got it. They wanted to get, like they're giving back to the people, so to speak.
Exactly, and for them to book us of all bands, it's just like, what the fuck? Like, it didn't make any sense. And
Sure.
we got over there, and they threw us on a bus, like, with bunks, and we're just like, what the hell? Like, this is crazy. And then people were like, well, they're only doing this because they're trying to improve their reputation over here with, with hardcore kids. We pull up to shows. I mean, pulling up to a squat in Germany on a bus with bunks and plumbing and whatever, it just makes you feel like the biggest piece of shit ever.
Sure. So
it was definitely, that was when we were like, well, what are we doing? Because this isn't really us.
Right.
But
and so as Chokehold was kind of wrapping up, like, did you saw it coming, obviously. So, did the seeds already get kind of planted for you to potentially, do like a record label and do Goodfellow and stuff like that? Or where did that idea come in your mind?
Yeah, I think, I was already doing a record label previous to that with Jeff, and we did the Slugfest and the Bloodlet 7 inches. So
that was Surface Records, right?
That was Structure.
Structure, that's right. I knew it was an S.
But that didn't really leave a good taste in my mouth for doing a label, so I took a break from that. And then probably after the band had been broken up for, I would say it was probably about a year, that's when I started, mulling the idea of doing a comp. Was the first thing I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I actually didn't really even think about doing a label. I just wanted to do a comp, but I figured, since I've come this far and contacted all these bands, I'll start a label. So that's kind of where that came from.
Sure. Because that was, for people that don't know, you obviously signed my band Taken, and that was like my first interaction with you. And so I just remember sitting in my college computer room. I was a freshman, and I just remember getting an email from you because we had no fucking clue what we were doing. We were sending around 7-inch press packages, which who the fuck is going to listen to a 7-inch press package? But it sounds so foreign now, but people still did kind of like, all right, well, this is how you get your word out and how you get your band name out. And we weren't expecting to get signed off this, but I just remember receiving that email from you and being like, I was like intimidated and scared to speak to you because I was just like, oh my god, dude, here's Chris Logan from fucking Chokehold. Like, this is like Goodfellow Records. Like, it was on my radar, but I just didn't, like I said, I just didn't expect it. And so that's obviously where our relationship began and everything. And so you put out, how many releases at the end of the day? Like, it was like, I don't know, 60 or 70, right?
Yeah, I think I want to say it bailed out around close to 60, like 58 or something like that. Yeah,
and that was your, for the most part, it was your full-time endeavor, but obviously you were also working at the distribution company that handled Goodfellow Records, Sonic Unyon, so... I
like to pretend it was my full-time endeavor, but it definitely, I never really fully realized that because with like the stuff I was doing at Sonic Unyon really took most of my time up, but but without those guys, I probably wouldn't have got as far as I did. That's for sure.
Yeah, sure. And then you obviously did a band after Chokehold as well called 78 Days, and Goodfellow put out the first EP, and then Trustkill put out the second EP. Like, was it when you and Matt decided to do that? Was this something you guys were like, all right, like, let's get back in the saddle and like let's fucking hit this, or was it like, all right, let's kind of see how it goes, or what was your mentality?
I think we were both, especially I know for sure I was pretty full on. Like, I wanted to do something, and I definitely wanted to tour, and I definitely wanted to play a lot of shows. But I think we quickly realized that that wasn't going to happen because after Chokehold was done, we all kind of settled into some serious jobs and whatnot.
Right.
So it wasn't something like I was going to be able to take time off work, and Matt wasn't going to be able to take time off work, and Josh, and So I think we just settled on playing a lot of shows around the area. Like we played Syracuse a few times and Buffalo, and
Well, and it's probably good that you guys didn't have these huge aspirations because I mean, even though stylistically, like I personally really enjoyed what 78 Days did, but stylistically, like Drive Like Jehu influenced hardcore at at that time was clearly not going to set the world on fire.
Oh my God, we had, it's funny because all of us were so into that band, like we just thought everything we were doing was so fucking good. Compared to Chokehold, it was like, wow, we're actually like writing kind of a song, and
right.
There's kind of parts, and it just doesn't all fall apart at the end and stuff. So
and your recording quality improved exponentially because
it was the first time like any of us had recorded and could actually like play it for people and not kind of turn red while we're playing it. But you're right, because people just didn't fucking get it at all. And we would play shows and people would buy the record. I swear to God, this happened so many times. People would buy the record, go out to their car and play it and bring it back to us.
Man.
And say, this is nothing like Chokehold. Like, well, no, it's not. And we took back a ton of records because people just didn't like it at all.
Sure.
And when we played, we went on tour with Brothers Keeper and a few dates with Boys Sets Fire. And we played this one show, and it was those three bands, and it was Converge and Today Is the Day as well.
Okay.
It was in a huge hall in D.C., and we played first, and after every song was just fucking crickets, like
dead silent.
Yeah, or we play faster, or where's the mosh part?
Where's the Chokehold cover?
It was brutal. That tour killed us. We just came home and just our heads buried in the sand.
Yeah.
Like, why can't people just like this?
Well, it's interesting having that like second go around experience where it's just like something that you're trying to break away from.
Yeah.
People just, in some respects, people just want to hear what you've previously done or whatever.
Yeah, I get that because I'm the same way with some bands, right? So
right.
I understand that.
We're all guilty of that.
It's not like it was. I mean, I guess I was shocked because I didn't feel like it was too wimpy. You know what I mean? And I thought it definitely had balls to it, but
right.
I don't know. I guess people didn't.
People didn't gel with it.
Yeah.
And so now that you're obviously like not doing Goodfellow, look back on the label and kind of give sort of one triumph where you're just like, wow, this was incredible that I was able to achieve this, or we were able to do this, or whatever. And then sort of looking back at the same time period and being like, one monumental mistake where it was like, all right, like I fucking wish that I didn't sign this band, not because they suck, but just because they broke up like 2 weeks after I put out the record.
I don't know. I mean, it was all good to me. Every record we put out, I was pretty excited. Like I'd get excited like a little kid and just wait for it to come back from the pressing plant. But I definitely, the days like where we put your records out and like Shogun, I was definitely most stoked at that point because I was not hating music as much then.
Sure.
So I remember I remember bothering you like so much. Like, I just want to hear a little bit of, because I think that was when you guys were recording and they slept.
Sure.
And I couldn't wait to hear that, man. I just was dying to hear it. And I know but like everyone at Sonic Onion and all my friends, they were all dying just as much as I was. Because you guys got a pretty sick following up here, but
yeah, it was just, and it was so, like when I talk to people about it to this day, where it's just like the Southern Ontario area, it just blew my mind how obviously they embraced us so, heavily and steadily, and obviously you can, directly link it back to the fact of your proximity and the fact that people paid attention to what Goodfellow was doing. But yeah, it was just so because still at that time it was really weird for people like a West Coast band to hook up with like an East Coast Canadian label. Like people ask us that question all the time, and it was like, I don't know, it made sense.
Yeah, and you guys definitely, like, you guys putting records out on my label definitely set off that kind of thing for me, because then, you know, it wasn't weird for bands to, at first I'd be like, well, you know, I'm from Canada and, you know, I don't really have great distro over in the U.S. because no one was really interested in distroing a Canadian hardcore label then.
Of course.
But I think you guys helped me out in the fact that it wasn't weird for bands from the U.S. to sign to Goodfellow anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so what sort of I mean, it doesn't even have to be like this monumental, catastrophic mistake, but just looking back, where it's just like, oh yeah, like I wish the chips would have fallen a little bit differently on this scenario or whatever.
I don't know, man. It's hard for me to talk about Goodfellow because it started off as one thing and ended off as something completely that I didn't want and didn't like.
Yeah.
I think that the problem is it wasn't so much of a problem as like I wanted to work with my friends, and it's really hard to mix business with friendship.
It's hard, yeah.
Very, very, very hard. And I think I had a really hard time separating that with a lot of people, because most of the bands that I worked with and put records out for were friends of mine, and that became really difficult, and I think that created a lot of stress and anxiety for me in the end.
Sure. Well, you yourself as a person are already you are already very high strung, even though it's funny because your persona and the way that you present yourself is like, you know, very, you could be from California and people would not be like, oh, this, you know, but underneath, I kind of equate you to like a duck, where it's like on the surface you seem pretty calm and like things are cool. I mean, you can obviously see when you're stressed, but then underneath you're just like this, you know, bubbling, like, oh my God, like so much shit's going like in your head. You're just in your head.
I took on way too much.
Yeah.
At the end, like I was doing Goodfellow. We had like probably 8 records in the works for Goodfellow. And I was also managing that label, Lab Work, which Winter Sleep was on, which is a pretty big band from Canada. Mm-hmm. And that label had ties with EMI. So I was running that label. I was label managing Sonic Onion as a label. I was managing the distribution company. And it all just came to a head, and like I almost had, or possibly had, a nervous breakdown and just kind of quit like everything.
Right.
And you know, which was a huge deal for me because it's not like me to quit. So, but I knew if I didn't, I'd probably be in a lot of trouble, like health-wise.
You'd be institutionalized?
Absolutely. I have no doubt. So I just quit, man. I walked in, like, I had this really, really, really horrible night of just kind of melting down, and then I went into work the next day and I laid it all on the line and just quit. So,
yeah.
And at the same time, like with Goodfellow, like I just put out what should have been a series of our biggest records and our best sellers. Mm. It was like this perfect storm, like this culmination of the labels getting really big. We're just putting out Curse 3, which was going to be huge, and it leaked. That was like this was kind of like all around that time when records would leak, you know what I mean, and kids would download the shit out of them.
Right.
And this was all when all that was happening. Like kids were not buying records when all this stuff was coming out, like my biggest records. Mm-hmm. That's when people just didn't give a shit anymore. They didn't buy records. And that thing leaked probably a month before it came out, and everybody downloaded it. And that was supposed to be like the record that kind of hopefully brought us halfway out of the hole.
Right.
And then the band broke up after it came out. So
Right.
And then what else can be said? Like basically 3 records I think we put on the road. The bands broke up, and
Right.
it was just a really, really bad scene.
Sure, like one blow after one blow, and it's like there's only so much that you can take.
Yeah, exactly. And the amount of money that was out there was just so much, and the amount of money that we're sitting in a hole was so much, and yeah, it was the perfect storm, really.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like you said, you obviously removed yourself from the situation, and your passion for music never died and everything. But there is something obviously, like we were mentioning before I started recording, where it was like you are a grown ass man. You are an adult now. You have a child, which we will speak of in a few minutes. But
I do.
You you are no longer straight edge
No, I'm not.
and you are no longer vegan or vegetarian.
No, I'm not.
And so, and obviously, you look back on, what Chokehold was doing, and it's like, granted, it's a very long span of time. So it's like, how you, in my own personal opinion, where it's like you see 2 schools of thought when it comes to obviously like straight edge and that whole youth culture movement, where it's like people that do continue on with it, and that is one thing. But then there's the people that obviously decide to stop for whatever reason. You have your people that stop and look back on that time and view it as childish, stupid, whatever, and they kind of shuffle past that if they ever it gets brought up in a casual conversation.
Right.
And then you have your people who are on the other side who are just like, no, I'm proud of that, and it got me through great times in my life, and it served a purpose, but that purpose is no longer there. You strike me as the person who kind of falls in the ladder of the camp. Am I right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, if I was the other type of person, I kind of would kind of turn my back on my roots, right? But,
right.
I mean, I still am very passionate about what I did, and I still kind of, in a way, I live the same lifestyle. Like, I'm not straight edge, but I'm not a burnout. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
When I was straight edge and all my friends were becoming unstraight edge, it was like, well, I've missed 20 years of this. I have to make it all up and now. And, those people would become addicts. That never happened for me. Like, I don't binge on anything. I never binged when I stopped being straight edge. I never, it's just, I went through that. I think if there's a plus with, drinking and doing drugs is I already did that. So I went through that period a long time ago before I was straight edge.
Right.
And that's kind of why I went straight edge, is because if I didn't, I would probably be maybe dead. I don't know. Like I definitely had a problem back then. Mm-hmm. I died. I overdosed on booze and drugs one night. So, I ended
that's a positive. Yeah.
No, but I mean, I ended up in the hospital, and that, luckily I came through it and turned shit around. So I have there's no urgency for me to go back to that nightmare part of my life. So,
right.
I figure I'm 38. If I come home from work and I want to have a beer, I'll have a beer. I'm not gonna have 20 and be like, worst day at work ever. Give me a 24 case.
Right.
I can handle it, and that's kind of, that's kind of where I sit.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. That's like I said, I knew you fell in that camp, and obviously there are other people that fall in the other camp, and that's, I think, people that do grow up, and obviously, I mean, I'm 31 and I'm still straight edge, but I don't, I'm not looking at you being like, oh man, Logan is a total burnout.
No, I know, and you never have. You're actually the first person that found out about it, so.
Yeah.
And no one has ever given me any kind of like the only people I was like when I stopped being straight edge, the only people that I was really concerned about what they would think of me was you and Chris Callahan.
Right.
and that's the truth. And both of you didn't really care, which was cool. I mean,
That's yeah. We're reasonable people and we're grown ups, and we're not 17 years old anymore.
yeah, and exactly. So that's really all there was to it. I mean,
Sure.
there was no conceited effort to be like, I'm going to break straight edge. And
I can't wait. This is the moment I've been waiting for my whole life.
yeah, exactly.
And so hitting on, like I was mentioning, you have a kid, and how old is he now?
8.
Okay. And I myself have a child that's a year old, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you something that it's just continually on my mind, where
Okay.
because obviously your child being 8 years old, he is completely becoming his own individual, and
Absolutely.
you as a parent, you have to obviously ultimately realize that you have some influence on a child's life, obviously, but at the end of the day, they're going to run off and do their own shit.
Yep.
So, like, how has that been, raising a child with sort of the independent culture that you've kind of been brought up in, and how does that influence the way that you raise him?
It's right now. I'm not. Right now, I still have a say in what he does, and I still feel like I influence him.
Okay.
I know those days are probably coming to an end fairly soon.
Yeah, they're numbered.
But I have a very unique relationship with him because, like, I only have him half the week, so like I have him Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So when I have him, it's not like before when I had him all the time. It was kind of, okay, well, on the weekend we'll do something, you know what I mean, and we'll plan something, we'll spend some time together. Now when I have him, almost every second is kind of dedicated to hanging out with him because I only have him for half the week. So our relationship is almost buddy. Like we're buddies first, and then I'm his dad second, almost.
Okay.
So it's weird. It's kind of hard to explain. It's like he'll hang out with me. You know what I mean? Like we'll hang out. We'll play Skate 3 on PS3, and
right.
And, every second word out of his mouth is "dude," and it's not "dad" or "daddy." It's like, "Dude, oh my God, I just pulled a sick Christ Air."
Right.
So, but at the same time, you gotta still be a dad sometimes. So it's harder to be a dad when you're that buddy with your kid. Because when you do have to be a dad, it makes it that much harder because you gotta, drop the hammer.
Yeah, of course.
And then you feel like a dick because you're not used to dropping the hammer.
And so, does are you the one? And I wouldn't even really qualify this as a fear personally, but it's one of those things where I'm just so curious as to what, when your kid is, whatever, 13, 14, 15 years old, what is he going to bring home that's going to shock you? What is he going to do that's going to be like, you're going to have no context for what it is? And it's just like, that's the one thing that it just blows my mind, because I think that we've experienced so much within sort of the independent pop culture world, more so than what our parents have. Just because of the, glut of information that's out there. So I'm just so curious as to see what that's going to happen, what that's going to look like when they try to rebel.
That's a good question, man. I don't know. I'm so, like, I'm such a paranoid parent already. Yeah. Like, I worry about shit that no one should ever worry about. Like, I'll nitpick over the stupidest stuff. Like, oh my God, his toenail's too long. I gotta cut that, or it'll get stuck in a shoe, or just. So I don't know. I mean, probably everything will shock me at that point. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting, because I just think that we're a culture of stunted adolescence in a way, where it's like,
Yeah, absolutely.
Where, I mean, like we accept responsibility and we will be, we're not skirting that and we're not just like, oh, fuck the world, like,
Yeah.
but there is that semblance of just like, dude, we've been pretty much doing the same stuff since we were 15 years old. Whereas
Yeah. Yeah.
our parents had to kind of, grow up in some way. So I don't know, it'll be interesting, but
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I can't project that far.
yeah,
It's weird because I was just looking at pictures the other day of him when he was like 2. And I remember when he was 2 being like, I can't picture at all what this is going to be like when he's 5 or 8.
right.
And now he's 8, and I just can't. Every day I'm like, oh my God, when he's a teenager, it's going to be a nightmare. Like what's it going to be like?
Yeah.
But I'll just roll with it like I have been. I don't know.
Yeah, there's not much
what to expect.
Not much planning ahead when it comes to parenting.
He's such a chill kid. He's awesome. Like
Mm-hmm.
I definitely it's awesome because as he gets older, I can project more of my interests on him.
Of course.
Now music, like I'm trying to, get him interested in music, and he is interested in music, but just really bad music.
Right.
In my opinion, but
sure.
I don't say anything. Like if he's listening to whatever, some dancey song, I don't say, "Oh, that's horrible."
Right.
Because I want him to be interested in it no matter what.
That's true. Yeah.
But right now, for him, like he's going through my CD wallet in the car, and yeah, I still have a CD wallet in my car. But he goes through it, and he doesn't look at the band names. He just looks at the artwork that's on the CDs, and he'll pick he DJs the car, so he'll pick out whatever looks the most gnarly. So he's handing me up, King Diamond and stuff like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So.
And sort of two last things to sort of wrap everything up. One, you mentioned earlier that you're, currently playing your new musical endeavor, so to speak, with Dave from Harvest and Matt, who you've been playing with for years. Like,
yeah.
What sort of info would you like to reveal about that?
It's an epic adventure.
Good. Because,
we're all dads, and Dave is a new dad as of, I think, no less than 2 months ago.
Right.
So that's been making things, and my work schedule and Matt's insane work schedule, just getting together has been challenging. But we have 5 songs, and we were hoping to record them in March, but we didn't. So hopefully we'll record them this summer and then get them out in some form or another.
What's the name of the band?
Anxiety.
There you go.
Aptly.
You guys have very aptly, and they have a Facebook page, I know, with some music up there.
Yeah, there's some music. It's it is what it is.
Crappy demo space recordings.
Yeah, it was recorded on Dave's laptop or something. But
yeah.
In other breaking news.
Breaking.
Looks like I'm going to be playing some music with some Buffalo hardcore dudes shortly as well. So.
Oh, wow. And people you're allowed to reveal, or you got to keep that in
Yeah,
wraps?
well, I think Mike Jeffers.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and one of his friends from Rochester.
Nice, very cool.
Yeah, so he sent me some songs yesterday, and they're awesome. So hopefully we'll put those together soon as well.
Nice. Yeah. You got to always have the musical bug.
Yeah, man.
And then sort of to wrap things up, obviously, since, we're speaking as friends, but at the same time, there's obviously also the fact that you can look back at, the fact that people still talk about Chokehold, which I'm sure just kind of makes your head explode in certain ways where it's like, that doesn't even make sense. So how does the musical legacy kind of sit with you now, where it's just like, it's so strange that people still pay attention to something that happened in the early 90s?
I don't know, because I don't know if people are paying it. Like, I don't, no one's banging down my door being like, Chokehold, this and that. Like,
Well, here I'm gonna reference something that, I mean, because I do agree. Like, maybe 4 years ago, more people might have been saying stuff about Chokehold, but something that happened within the past 6 months. That band Foundation, that's from Atlanta.
Yeah.
I think they did like a hometown show or whatever, and they made like 50 or 60 of these shirts. And basically it just says, "Listen to Chokehold." Like
awesome.
on the back of the shirt. And I'm fairly certain that it's a rip in some way, shape, or form of like an early Chokehold shirt design. I can't remember the Foundation shirt exactly what it looks like, but basically it just says, "Listen to Chokehold." And granted, Foundation is definitely steeped in mid-90s, mythology and hardcore, so that's not too out of the realm. But
right.
But yeah, so it's like, there is still that sort of reverential interest.
It's weird for me because I'm kind of entrenched in a I don't really go to many shows anymore. It's not by choice. I just don't have time.
Sure.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm steeped in a grown-up world here. So it's, the weirdest thing that happened to me is my friend of Liam's dad took me to see Alexis on Fire. And he's like, "Yeah, you got to come see this band, Alexis on Fire." So I went with him, and the whole time I'm just like,
you're like, this is so weird.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, I just want to say to him, like, I was in a band like this, and but I don't, and we just go about our life. But,
right.
I don't know. It's weird. I'm a grown-up dad, so I go to school and pick up my kid, and
you do your thing.
Yeah, I do my thing. But
does your child have any frame of reference in regards, like, have you showed him stuff where it's like, hey, this is what Dad did a long time ago?
I haven't, but I know he's aware, and it probably his mom or my girlfriend is probably. I think my girlfriend Tara showed him the video on YouTube, and he's just like, he looked at it for about 5 seconds, and then whatever. I'm gonna build some Lego.
That's amazing.
No, he doesn't. He knows, but he doesn't really grasp it.
Right.
Probably most people, whether they're kids or adults, don't really grasp it. So
yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. I don't know. Like I said, no one's banging down my door saying, Chokehold this or Chokehold that. But
right. Yeah, you're not on the Bridge 9 Records message board looking for Chokehold references, and or you have a Google search, Google alert set to Chokehold. No.
I think my claim to fame will always be is that I played some shows with Refused.
I know those guys.
Yeah, I played with them. I got a picture of me beside the singer. That's about as cool as I get. So.
Hey, that's worth some credential points right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Christopher, thank you so much for obviously wanting to hang out on the phone and wax poetic about everything that is fun with music.
Thanks, man. It was fun.